Hey, what up everybody? Antoine Fantoine here, internet's busiest music nerd. It's cold outside, it's snowing, it's disgusting. Why? It's spring. Ugh. All right, this is, I assume, gonna be my last video talking about this. I thought I would just make a quick video on the second channel over here because there's not a whole lot in terms of major updates to my thoughts on this record. However, the ever-evolving Kanye West album, The Life of Pablo, it is out again, but now on Apple Music, it's on iTunes, it's on all major streaming platforms other than Tidal, and it has a new mix. Now, before we talk about that, let's take a walk down memory lane for a second here. Memory lane, memory lane. Here we go. Here we go. You remember this? Do you remember this? This happened back in February. My album will never, never, never be on Apple, and it will never be for sale. You can only get it on Tidal. What? It's almost as if that was bullshit from the get-go. And you know why? Because this album, it's not just on Good Music, it's on Def Jam. And Def Jam Records does not release albums for them to be exclusively released on one of the smaller music streaming platforms on the internet. They release albums to be sold and streamed by everyone so that they can make money. For sure, I'm sure they did Kanye a solid to sort of, have an exclusive release on Tidal first. But it's Def Jam we're talking about here. They're a record business. Their business is in record sales. So, they're going to be looking for their cut, and they want the music to be released so that everybody can have access to it. It's the record label. All right. Let's move on. So this album, new mix, and I think it's an improvement to the record. I think the mix improves this album. It's a better mix. The bass is so resonant. There's less clash. There's less clutter. And overall, I just think the album sounds better. To be honest, it didn't make me fall in love with any tracks that I didn't previously love, but I do think it makes tracks like Fade bearable. I actually think the groove on that track sounds way better now that the bass is way more resonant, way more full, way more vivid. I guess compositionally I'm still not in love with the track, and there are a number of other songs here that conceptually, musically, I don't really care for. I still think Highlights is a very mild moment on the record. I still think Waves is painfully boring. Lowlights is totally filler. Now that the album has been out a while, it's pretty obvious that track where Designer is featured is not really an original Kanye West song as much as it is just a remix of a Designer song with Kanye West vocals thrown on top and a beat change in the midst of the track. So the thing is, while this mix is good and it does improve the album, overall I do think the album is better because of this mix. And there are some bass lines or I guess subtle musical moments that I didn't hear before. Either they were added in later or they were in there all along, but this better mix has brought them to just greater prominence. So the music, the production, it just sounds better. However, even though the mix was lackluster on the version that came out on Tidal, the version that was being shared around the internet, it wasn't one of my major issues with the album. I thought the subpar mixing and the kind of messy, somewhat lo-fi vibe of the record was a part of just how chaotic and messy and crazy and unhinged the album was supposed to be. I thought it was essentially a part of the aesthetic. And, I think it worked to a degree. I don't think the album is necessarily made worse by it being cleaned up a little bit in terms of the mix, because the sounds that are in the mix, a lot of which are very raw, still sound crazy, especially on tracks like Freestyle 4, for example. Tracks like Ultralight Beam still sound fantastic, and that's another thing. All the songs that I loved when I originally heard the album, I still think are great. In fact, I think they sound better. Again, I guess it all sounds better, to the point where, you know, I could see myself feeling like maybe a strong 6, a light 7 on a really great day, on the greatest of days, you know. But overall, I am feeling more positive toward just the sound of this album. But still, those moments, especially the lackluster lyrical moments on this thing, like the Dick GoPro upgrade or bleached assholes and all that shit. Of course, all of that, this mix has done nothing more than just make all of that just louder and more obvious and in your face. So, you know, this mix isn't fixing any of the lyrics or anything, any of the lyrical shortcomings of this album. And that's the thing, you know, there's so many other glaring flaws about this record other than just the mix. So, I don't know. I will definitely take a listen to any other revisions to this album that there may be in the future. Of course, there are still rumors of that going around the internet, that there's going to be another version, and yet Kanye is also going to be releasing, allegedly, that TurboGrafx 16 record at some point this year. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if that album takes on the same aesthetic, the same style, is also chaotic. And other than that, I'm not really sure there's anything else I wanted to say. You know, I guess the update is that the mix is better. It's a better mix now that it's on iTunes, now that it's on Apple Music. I guess my last comment on this is, why wasn't this the mix originally when the album came out? I mean, going back to my video where I talked about albums sort of being alive in a sense and sort of revising albums before the audience's very ears, I'm interested in that concept. I think that is an interesting concept. I think that's a cool concept. But Kanye, for the most part, is kind of leaving us in the dark about this concept, if that is in fact what he's trying to do. You know, it just kind of seems like he's changing the album when he gets around to it. He's telling us that things aren't going to happen, like the album's not going to be on Apple, and then it ends up on Apple. He's not giving us fair warning as to what he's doing. He's really just kind of keeping us in the dark and surprising us and giving reason to sort of talk about him and buzz about this record again and again and again. It's a little manipulative, but that's kind of the game that Kanye plays. What are you going to do? Other than enjoy the music if it does in fact appeal to you. So I will say before I close this video out, if you thought the sound of this record was trash, you know, shout out to my dude Digibro, because I know you hated the sound, I know you hated the mix of this record originally. If you thought the sound of The Life of Pablo was garbage, then I recommend that you try out this new mix, because it is better. It is cleaner, there is more bass, there is more resonance, there do seem like there are some subtle musical additions to the mix here and there, maybe some background vocals or bass lines that, like I said before, either they were added in or you could just hear them better now, because the mix, there's just more space, it's just better organized, there's less clashing. Even though previously I saw the appeal behind that in a sense, because it felt like Kanye was going crazy, he was going raw, and the mix reflected that. But now I guess, you know, it's that rawness, but it's a little more clear. It's a little more crisp. It's a little more HD, I guess you could say. So yeah, those are my thoughts essentially on the sound of this slightly newer version of The Life of Pablo. And I don't know, hopefully the next revision, if there is another revision of this record, it does tip the scales even further toward just me feeling more positive about this album, because I do think there are good things about this album, and there are terrible things about this album. But, you know, it would be crazy to see if this album sort of continually being changed actually ended up making it an amazing album. You know, shout out to anybody who's going to drop down in the comments and say, "But Anthony, it is an amazing album." Yeah, shout out to you. You're the best. All right, Anthony Fantano, The Life of Pablo, revised, mix, forever.